First and foremost, why don't we start with Mr. Holland? Tom, can you tell us the obviously? Oh, thank you, Tom. Tom, obviously you started out as an actor, and then you went to become a screenwriter. You did The Beast Within and Psycho 2, a couple of my favorites. Class of 1984, and then you made the segue to directing. Fright Night was your first directorial film. So what was it about this story that made it be the first film you wanted to direct?
Psycho 2 was an enormous sleeper hit, and this was the first film where I had sufficient credibility in Hollywood to be able to direct it. And I had also this is truth now, and so I'll try to be tactful. I'd had a film before, after Psycho 2 and before Fright Night, called Scream for Help, which I thought was so badly directed that in self-defense, I wanted to protect the material, and that's why I started directing with Fright Night, because the previous script that I had written had turned out so badly. So that was
From the Ashes.
Yeah, From the Ashes rises. Yeah, so that's the story.
And what was it that made you decide on the vampire take? Because obviously, I assume you're a big fan of vampire films, and for a lot of us here, Fright Night is one of our favorite vampire films. So what was it that you decided that was the story?
I had the idea of a horror fan who loved the Friday night frights like I did when I was growing up. All those they used to have on the independent channel, whatever town you were, they ran the terrible sci-fi horror movies on Friday night, and you'd fight with your parents and everything else. You'd stay up till 11 o'clock and you'd watch it, and that was how my generation grew up. And Fright Night is my very, very affectionate memory of that. And so I thought the idea of a gonzo horror fan becoming convinced that a vampire lived next door, which of course no one would ever believe him, and it was true. I just thought it was just deliciously funny, and it was what I always wished would happen to me. And I carried the idea around for a year, and I could never work out the story. And then, and I don't know how, I thought of the Roddy McDowall character, Peter Vincent. And the minute I had that the kid went to the Fright Night horror host, I had a story. And it just sort of jumped into my head finally after thinking about it for a year, like the entire script was there. And I wrote it in like 2 or 3 weeks. I've been thinking about it for a year, but I mean, I had the idea forever, but it was Peter Vincent that gave me the key to the story.
Wonderful. Can we go down the line and just each person explain how Fright Night came about and your initial reactions to the script and how you became involved in Fright Night?
The script was sent to me. I remember very vividly. I was living in New York, and I got the script. My agent said that somebody was interested in the possibility of my doing the movie, and I said to myself, there's no way I can do a horror movie. I can't do a vampire movie. I can't do a movie with a first-time director, not first-time screenwriter, but first-time director. And I sat down and I read the script, and I remember very vividly sitting in my desk, and I looked over at my wife, my then wife, and I said, "This is amazing. I don't know. I got to meet this guy." And so I came out to LA, and I met with Tom and our producer. And we just hit it off, and that was it.
He took a chance. He took a big, big chance.
On a very, very fabulous script and a very talented guy. And by the way, Tom essentially sat there and just described the entire movie to me in our first meeting. I mean, he said, okay, this movie's going to open with this shot, and then this is going to happen, and there's going to be a tracking shot into this, and then this. And he had the whole thing mapped out in his head. And I thought, well, I have to worry about this guy. Let's go to work.
I didn't know anything was going to work, though.
Yeah, well.
What?
I was working, I think, in a hardware store in San Francisco. Not quite same situation. My imaginary agent called and said we had this. No, I had just gotten out of acting school in San Francisco, and I had met a woman who was a casting director. Long story, she had a friend who was an agent in San Francisco, and they were casting the movie Mask. And she said, "Do you know any kids who might be right for this role, Rusty in Mask?" And she said, "Well, this guy I saw, whatever, he might be a possibility." So I came down and I met with her and Peter Bogdanovich and stuff, and that didn't work out. But a few months later, she called and said, "There's this movie I'm casting now, it's Jackie Birch. So there's a movie I'm casting that you might be really right for. I'd like for you to come down." So I had this 1976 Toyota Celica that I never put water in, but it still ran. And I drove that through the San Joaquin Valley desert for 4 or 5 trips down for auditioning. And the last one was Stephen was there, and Amanda was there, I think, and that's when it happened. I read the script. I'd been doing Shakespeare and Greek drama and stuff, so I read this thing. I was like, "Well, God, this is a lot of fun." But there's no iambic pentameter. There's no rhymes. Where's the catharsis? What happens to the tragic? Where's the tragedy? And so anyway, it ended up happening, and I actually got the call on Halloween that they had decided to use me, and I was delighted. And I came down, and a week, 10 days later, I was on the Three Stooges stage shooting a horror movie, and I couldn't have been happier.
Jonathan?
Well, I remember when they sent me the script, I thought, I should give this director a chance. It was my first thing, my first film, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So I know he has to be a big guy, so I kind of had that covered. And I actually put pads in my shoes and like put 5 shirts on, and I was as big as I can. That's when I was actually thinner at the time. And I go in there and I'm thinking, I'm reading this scene, and it's where Billy has to throw out the detective. And I thought, gee, if I was trying to throw out the detective, I wouldn't be evil. I'd be as funny as I could be. So I threw this stuff in, and Tom was, I think, thrilled at that. And that was like, hey, thanks, you're great. So 6 months go by, I don't hear a thing every day. Calling the casting director on the phone, hey Jackie, do you really think they want me? Yeah, they really want you, but nobody's called me. No, Tom, he really loves you, he wants you. Yeah, it's Hollywood. But he was true to his word, and he used me, and God, I think it's one of the most fun things I've ever been involved with. And that's my story.
How about you, Amanda?
Wow. Well, Tom had this idea for a year in his head, and then it came on the page. Now, I was doing a movie with Stephen, where we were boyfriend and girlfriend. That was originally called Wendell, and then it became something called Fraternity Vacation. And during that time, I kept my clothes on, okay? Every other chick in the movie, whatever. I got to take a little, have a little more adventure in Fright Night. But I went through the audition process, as did a lot of other actresses, and Jackie Birch was lovely. I had not been in the business very long. I had not been in Los Angeles for very long. This was a very new experience for me. This was a major motion picture. This was Columbia Pictures, and it was a huge, big deal. And yet she was very much my champion, and that was the process, as it often is. You go to audition, and you get called back and called back. And lo and behold, I got the film. And then it wasn't until right at the end, or maybe even after, we realized, oh, we're going to see each other next week on this other. So that was kind of cool too, to have a familiar face there, and off we went.
Stephen, it seems she told your story for you, but what were your initial reactions to the script and when you got involved initially?
Insisted on using it.
That's right. Did you know that? No. But no, I actually met Jackie Birch, the casting director, by mistake in New York months before this movie was cast, and she remembered me from, my agent sent me to an audition for Weird Science, and Anthony Michael Hall was with the same agent that I was with, and she sent me by mistake, and Jackie looked at me when I walked in the office and said, "You're not Agent Michael Hall," and I'm like, "No." But anyway, I sat down and I talked to Jackie for like a half an hour, and she remembered me from that interview, and called my agent, and my agent sent me the script when I was with Amanda in Palm Springs doing Fraternity Vacation, and I read it, and I just, you know, it was awesome. I mean, it just was, the writing is just incredible. I love, you know, sometimes you read a script and it's, yeah, but on this one I just got this really awesome feeling about it. And but anyway, I read it and I thought, I got to do this. And then I called my agent and I said, that'd be great, you know. And I said, yeah, I would love to audition for the part of Charley Brewster. And she says, "No, Steve, you're wanted for the part of Evil Ed." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, I couldn't. Why? I couldn't. What do they see in me that could think that make them think that I could be this? But anyway, it worked out. You know, it was awesome. I mean, I had a great time, and yeah, it's great to be here with everybody. Thanks.
And for Julie and Tommy, how did you both get involved with Fright Night 2? And Tommy, primarily, how familiar were you with the first movie when you did the second? And did you go back and look at it when you got to be directing for it?
I was a fan of the first movie, enjoyed it, laughed a lot, and but it's a little bit of time went by. It wasn't like it just, you know. It seems like back then sequelitis hadn't quite swept the movie industry.
I think the first one was 85 and the second one was 88.
Something like that. A little bit of time had gone by. And so when the opportunity came up, I thought, cool, that sounds like a great blast. And so my friends over at Vista Pictures, it was kind of mutual. About the time I was thinking about calling them, they called me, and it was like, all right, and let's fire up and go. I went to see Tom. I wanted to get his blessing and kind of get the torch properly passed. I think the only advice you gave me, Tom, was something like, you know, just don't get too serious about it. You know, make sure it's fun. It's got to be scary, but it's got to be fun too. And I took that seriously, and that was it.
And Julie, your character is technically the sister of Chris Sarandon's character from the first film. So, how did you prepare for that, and what did you think when you got involved with Fright Night 2?
And this is the first time I'm meeting Chris.
Oh wow!
Actually, I came to the set once.
Oh, okay.
Made an impression.
Wow.
I had never done a horror film. I had probably never seen a horror film. Things were coming in twos. I think this film was sent to me because Herb Jaffe I had just worked for the man who owns Vista. Herb Jaffe had done a movie with Raul Julia and Armand Assante called Penitent, which was about a penitent in northern New Mexico, and then went off to do Milagro being Field War, also in the area of Truchas where the penitents live. So, and then all of a sudden this vampire film showed up, and not having any horror in my background, I just looked at it as a whole new challenge. And we were very blessed also to have a really brilliant costume designer, Joe Sapporo, and choreographer Russell Clark, who I have to say just an homage to Russell. He choreographed the vampire dance, and he passed away in 2002, so he was a great boss. He was an extraordinary choreographer.
I'm sure there's plenty of questions from the audience.
I do want to say that the casting of Julie had everything to do with Chris's performance in the first one. Chris really set the bar very high for gorgeous vampires, you know. And so we wanted to uphold that tradition as we went along. The original was dead, of course, because he got killed right and proper by Charley Brewster. And
that was a sequel. You could have brought him back somehow.
Well, you know. Anyway, so to finish that off, we wanted to make sure that we kept that high standard, and here came beautiful Julie.
Anyone from the audience want to ask anybody on stage a question? Anybody? Right here?
One, was Peter been
And Vincent Price.
Even Stephen's Hagen.
Generation worse than us.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah, she has to, if,
I'm a hammer horror film.
okay, what I was paying homage to was AIP and Hammer. And Peter Vincent is Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. And that's what I was doing exactly.
And what was this to make it working on Ragsdale? I grew up as a
Oh, boy. Yeah, everybody, will. I don't really have anything bad to say about Roddy. I mean, I think hard. Roddy was a walking oral history of Hollywood. He had started out as a child actor at 20th. He did How Green Was My Valley for John Ford. He was a little boy in that, 8 years old. He may have received an Academy Award nomination for that. Yeah. Roddy literally grew up in the business, and it's terribly difficult to transition from a child actor into an adult and keep your career going. And that had been the biggest problem in Roddy's life, and solving that was a huge accomplishment for him. Roddy was everybody's friend. He was friends with people who could help him, and he was friends with people who could do nothing for him. He was friends with the silent movie stars that were still living at the motion picture home, as well as people like Elizabeth Taylor. I mean, he had the gift of friendship. And he was famous for having a Friday night dinner at his house on Wednesday and Friday nights, actually. And I attended a few, and there were. I met Vincent Price at Roddy's house. Wow. Okay, because Fright Night really is the expression of the ultimate fan, which is me. I mean, I think that is one of the reasons that it still has that it grows in people's estimation, because it touches the fan in all of us, and that was me. And I felt like that about Roddy, and Roddy knew all the stories. Roddy took when 20th Century Fox was closing down and being taken over by Sony. He walked me through MGM, through the old MGM. And he would say, on this stage, this movie was made, and this happened. So-and-so had an illicit affair in that dressing room up there. He would take me through the underground where they ran all the electrical cable and the gas lines. That's also where they stored the nitrate film, and it was still there. And Hollywood has no history. Modern Hollywood, and probably even Hollywood forever. It is really of the now and the grosses of the now. Roddy kept the flame burning for the talented people who had come and gone, and he still loved the people that were the actors and actresses who were the stars of the silence. And I never met anybody quite like him. He got work by his friendship, but he also loved the business. And so you had this. I met Philip Dunn there. People the younger people here wouldn't know or care. Just Walter Matthau, Walter Matthau's wife, Lee Remick, as she was dying of brain cancer. I mean, it was to go to Roddy's house was to get a vision of the business in terms of generations, especially with the actors. And so, and along with that was a mean, waspish tongue that could cut you to ribbons in a couple of sentences too. So he sort of took a paternal interest, and he sort of helped me, because this was my first film, and he made it a delight for me, and he protected me, and so he's a wonderful guy.
For William, I just wanted to know, since obviously we were talking about Rowdy, and we just watched the movie last night. I love your report together. You guys had a lot of great scenes together. So I was wondering what you remember about the shoot and working with Roddy.
Well, two things about what Tom said. I went to a few dinners up there too, and I had dinner. I sat next to Warren Call at one of them. Pasta and potatoes, please. But the greatest part of Roddy's house for me was his toilet. Because you go into the toilet by the front door, and as you're peeing, if you're a male, there's Laurel and Hardy's bowlers are up on in front of you on the wall. And there's like Buster Keaton's, bow tie and stuff like that. And it takes some concentration to pee in that environment.
And one autograph after another of everybody who had ever been anybody.
Every great movie star in Hollywood history.
Yeah, it was awesome. Just awesome. But he was great. I mean, he was really very generous, and I had grown up on the Planet of the Apes stuff, and I had grown up on Night Gallery, and so he was a real sort of icon for me, and for him to be as available and generous and fun as he was. I mean, he was as Tom says,
we were never there, but we're enjoying it.
No, but we talked about you guys so much, it was like you were there. You were the subject of so many conversations. No, but his tongue was, as Tom says, pretty amazing. And he said to me one time, he said, which, I was young, he said, I like you so much, I don't know why. But I like you. But he was great. He was wonderful, and his timing, of course, his comical timing. And someone told me, I don't know, maybe it was you, that he had done those the 8 movies, and he had really been covered up. His face was gone except for the eyes, and so he sort of learned to. It was almost a neo-mind thing. He sort of learned to communicate with his eyes and the technicality exactly. And that was a great learning thing too.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? This gentleman right here. Go ahead.
Was there ever any discussion of having Amy or Evil Ed in the sequel? Did you guys survive?
Okay, from Roddy and the parties to the sequel. All right. No, I recall, and maybe somebody can help me here. Maybe I just made this up. I thought there was one script that was read, that was thrown out. Maybe I made it up. I don't know. I thought I was there. A reading of a script. Yeah. Anybody?
Tommy? Were those characters ever in?
That would have predated my arrival. When I got there, I was certainly a fan of the original, and most certainly a fan of these two guys. And so my expectation was that there might be some continuity, but somebody somewhere had made a decision, and we'd have to go back to Vista Pictures and the executive staff to get answers on that.
Well, I mean, these things happen. It's really just kind of the nature of the beast, and I really, maybe I should have been more personally offended, but I was just glad there was a sequel, and I did have another little job that lasted a while, and I was grateful for that. Thank you very much. But I think it's the story that dictates, and and that is truly, because the thing about the script for me, there was such an obvious learnedness. Tom knew this lore, and that was just rich throughout all of that first script. So I just assumed that, there was the plot, the story, what needed to happen, and it happened. Thanks for thinking on it.
This gentleman in the back over here.
Yeah, this is off the topic of not pertaining to Fright. Can you speak up, sir?
Sing out, Louise.
Yeah, not pertaining to Fright Night, but this is pertaining to Amanda.
Oh.
Do you still keep in contact with the Bunnies?
Who? They're around somewhere. No, yeah, I mean, we see each other here and there. But it hasn't been a situation like this, which is really, truly remarkable about not only this evening, this weekend, to have us all gathered in the same place, and, it's a great.
The first time I saw the movie with an audience in a theater in New York City, sitting in the back of the audience, and they went crazy. And I thought, oh, hang on here. What's going on? Yeah, it was a real audience picture. And that was what sort of cemented it for me.
Yeah, I remember Chris telling me a story about a very famous boxer, stopping him. Here, go tell the story if you remember.
Sugar Ray Leonard. Yeah. I was walking out of the Beverly Hilton or the Beverly Hills Hotel or someplace, and literally I'm walking across the driveway to get my car, and somebody grabs me. And I went, what? And this is great looking African American guy standing there, and he said, "Man, I love that movie. I love that movie. Frightening." And I thought, well, we've arrived. Sugar Ray Leonard.
I didn't go to the screening because I was terrified that I sucked. So I went to New York City to hang out with my friends, and I said, you gotta go see it. I said, yeah, okay. So they take me down to Times Square to see it. Now, back in the 80s, Times Square was a lot different. Right. But to sit in the theater there, oh my God, really cool! Look out, Billy! Look out! Screaming the whole time. It was unbelievable. It was the most wonderful screening experience. I was so glad that I was actually there instead of in Hollywood where everybody's like, to hear those people screaming and just warning every other actor on the screen. It was great.
And for Jonathan, actually, I've been dying to know, and I'm sure other people have too, either you or Tom can answer this, but what exactly is Billy Cole? Is he a vampire or a detective? What's his story there?
You know, I have no idea. I really deferred to Tom on this one. He told me today I was a modern day Renfro, but I said, Renfro didn't melt. He was human. So I'm going to let Tom talk about it.
Renfield. Well, that's who Billy Cole was. I thought he was half human and half vampire, but he hadn't crossed over yet. So he could be the Jerry Dandridge's alter ego helper, and that he could exist during the day and in daylight. But he'd been bitten, but he hadn't. But enough blood hadn't transferred.
Any other questions?
Maybe when you're shooting I don't know, he could have done a few things differently.
Someone asked me today, if there's anything that, that you realize about the movie now. And I said that, the people who watch it over and over again, the fans, they see things that we don't see or that we didn't see. They make sort of connections and analogies and stuff. And one of the reviews made a connection between Jerry and Billy having this kind of homoerotic relationship. And I remember reading a review going, that's a vampire. I mean, what are they saying in this thing? But it's, I guess you see what you...
Tom, the great thing about, before we shot the thing, we had like a week or two of rehearsal. And it was, I don't really do movies anymore, so I don't know how much of that is around, but I'm guessing not a lot. And Chris and I really worked on the characters a lot. And I remember one scene where I'm washing his hand after he got stabbed with a pencil. Tom's like, kneel down in front of him. Huh? Why? I just want you to kneel down in front of him. Okay. So when I watch the thing, I'm like, oh my God!
Vampire movies have to keep rewriting the rules, otherwise we're still stuck back in what Bram Stoker invented for us. So, the idea that this guy can kind of hang out in the daytime, I think everybody wants that sort of thing. Certainly, I went through, I did a movie, a sequel to John Carpenter's Vampires. And you want to keep inventing stuff. You want to keep inventing, blood transfusions. And because of the blood transfusions, they can stay out for a little while during the daytime, so you can shoot a couple of scenes and surprise people. But I love the fact that he could hang out in the daytime and be sort of the adept, I guess, of Chris Sarandon's character.
For Amanda and Chris, actually, there's a couple sequences between the two of you. Yeah, the dancing scene, for example, that I love, and we're not gonna go there. But then also later, when you bite her, when you turn her over, there's a lot of subtlety, especially from your performance, almost being hesitant about hurting her. And I was just wondering how much preparation the two of you had for those two scenes, considering how well they both play out.
That was more in the moment, actually.
Yeah.
As I recall.
Yeah.
I mean, we did have. Okay, sorry.
We did have the luxury of this rehearsal time, and it was quite magnificent. We were on these Bearse sound stages in the studio, which has a lot of history that Roddy shared with us, where we ended up coming back to shoot the interiors of the film. But we were there with just a table and chairs, and it was just really raw bones and great stuff. But there are some moments that just play out in the moment. They have very much to do with how the shot is set up and their intimacy. So those were more arrived at, as I recall, in the moment, as opposed to on the stage. Oh, the director remembers. Sorry.
Give me that is Chris Sarandon. Chris wanted to deepen the character. Chris did not want just a black and white, the vampire is bad. It was Chris's idea. I know he was asking for shades in the character. And I can't remember whose idea it was, but I put the portrait, Amy's portrait, that was Chris's idea. And once you had that Amy looked like a lover from the past, perhaps the first lover, if you're doing the Bram Stoker Nina, that she was Nina Harker, or the 10 generations down, echoed Nina Harker. Then I put the portrait in that Charlie discovers when he brings the policeman in to look at the house, and you know that Amy looks like somebody he was in love with, God only knows how long ago. And then I put the portrait again up in the house in the bedroom when he seduces her, and that gave him a sadness to play. And you felt the same kind of emotion come through when he offered his hand to Evil Ed and said, "You're different, but come with me and nobody will ever mock you again or beat you up or make you cry." And that was following that line through. And that came out of Chris's desire to have the character of the vampire be deeper than what I wrote.
Well, also it seems to me that, going along with what Tom is saying, and also Amanda, and that is that we were all looking for what was deeply human about all of these people. That we weren't just after scaring the hell out of people, we were also after making them feel for these characters so that when something did happen to them, the audience is involved in some way. That you have a stake, pardon the expression, in the outcome. And those were the things that we did in rehearsal, the things that we did, one of the things that Tom insisted that we do, for instance, that we all do very detailed biographies of our individual characters, and then we sat around and discussed them, and we talked about the ramifications of those decisions that we made for ourselves in terms of the interrelationships of the characters. And it, hopefully, I think it did, enriched the piece so that you saw, for instance, from my own standpoint, that Jerry, there's always a price to pay for immortality. That it's not just wonderful, great, because you can live forever, but it's also a curse.
I want to put a footnote on that. When Tom mentioned "Come With Me," it made me think of Brad Feidel's magnificent score, which we amplified in part 2. Just wow, what a fine dimension he added to the whole thing.
Another thing that we were influenced by, I don't know the year that it came out, but the Stat came out, and Rice's Interview with the Vampire, right before, I don't know if it was before you guys did the first one, but I was really blessed to be able to read that, and what hit me was the 2,000-year-old nature of the character that I was being asked to play. And what do you do to keep the spark alive and basically entertain yourself through this extended life cycle by enjoying the little tiny subtleties of interacting with people. And one of the things that I really appreciated in Tommy's script is that within 2,000 years cycle, there aren't the same prejudices that we may have just in a little, 80-year-old life cycle that we have. And there was an opening up of what our society has in terms of fear of homosexuality and fear of different races. There was just an opening up, and I think that Regine was very open to, like, the Belle character, who was more transgender and African American, and I just appreciated that opening up.
More questions from the audience? This gentleman right here.
Yeah, Tom, I was wanting to find out the whole sequence that we were talking about earlier about Jerry and Amy dance. It seemed, what was brilliant to me anyway was the fact that it looked like when he was dancing with her, here she was, what, 15, 16, I'm assuming at the time?
16, 17.
And she seemed to grow up over the course of the entire dance.
It was the seduction. It was the beginning of the seduction.
Right.
We changed hairstyle,
And
cuts,
the music shifts.
and we changed also the blouse.
I mean, for a first-time director, I think it was still brilliant.
Well, thank you, but a lot of help. In order to show her awakening sexually to him, as they dance, I sexualize her with the change in hairstyle and a change in blouse. It goes from like a cotton blouse to a clinging silk blouse. And I don't want to...
She starts controlling the relationship then a little bit too.
Yeah.
She says yes and no at different spots that he's just kind of available for. So.
These were all things we discovered through the rehearsal process. I don't know if it was such an extraordinary opportunity. I don't know if you could ever get anything like that again. I mean, how many days do we have? A week?
Yeah.
It was maybe 2.
Okay, so 2 weeks. And I mean, I have, it's hard for me to imagine you could get stars to agree to rehearse for 2 and that's just 1.
Part of that equation is that Tom was an actor for years and years before that. So he knew sort of the process and respected that process of it. That's all the value of it.
Any more questions from the audience? Gentleman back there with glasses.
Okay, it doesn't seem very difficult to get you guys together right now. How about another movie?
Talk to the boss.
He's having a meet. Yeah, he's having a meeting next week.
It's once again, we care, but Hollywood doesn't. Because it's like trying to get them to release a box set, or gather together the information to do behind the scenes. I have a luncheon, like the 17th or 18th of this month, with the gentleman who is the head of the Sony Screen Gems to discuss a sequel and/or a remake. Now I know they never called me, so this is how it works. They've done 3 scripts trying to find a way to remake it, and apparently one script has been worse than the other. And so finally, after a year and a half and 3 scripts, I finally have a luncheon meeting. But nobody would have thought to have given me a ring before they started the 3 scripts.
Have you thought about Europe?
Yeah, they own the rights though. Columbia now Sony owns the rights.
Right. And Tommy called me about 2 or 3 years ago. I live in New Orleans part of the year. And he called me and said, an interest in Fright Night has come up, but what's the problem? You keep saying no to scripts. And I said, I've never seen a script to this thing, to any sequel. But the rumor was that I had been turning stuff down for years and years. I've never seen anything. And so it's that sort of dysfunctional, sort of line of communication that informs everything.
What they tried to do is they tried to change throw the story out, change the script, and set it in an amusement park. I mean, that is what the last writer told me. And I said, well, that sounds like Toby Hooper's Funhouse, circa 1982, produced by Mark Lester, which somebody finally told the powers that be that that's what it was. then they decided they better call me in for a lunch. So we'll see.
I don't, if we do it, if there's a sequel, it's just a thought that these two are married now, have a family, and they move in next door to the old vampires home. And, Chris and I
are. You're a producer, right? He's a director. We're available. You get a barn. She's got a farm.
I have a question. How many people here have seen Fright Night Part 2 on the big screen?
Yeah.
Raise hands. 3, 4, 7, 8 people. Okay. How many have seen it on TV? Well, do you know the history of why it didn't? I'll tell you the history. We made it, and it was being released by New Century Vista, and the openings per screen average was between 6,000 and 7,000 per screen average, which was terrific in those days. And that weekend, the head of the distribution company, Jose Menendez, was assassinated by his sons. So the whole distribution company went into a tailspin, and their product kind of floated, and they pulled everything and tried to regroup from the inside. And then when someone figured out they had the film on their hands, they sold it to whatever it was, Cinemax or Home Box Office, or, and then it really found its life in video. But I was just curious how many people had seen it on the big screen, because it had a very short release, and that's why.
Any more questions from the audience? As gentleman right in front.
Are we ever going to see a special edition?
I will plead the case. I will plead the case at the end of this month. But once again, my experience is they pull out the numbers and they tell me how much it would cost to produce and how much money they could make, and
But they throw all the other crap at us.
why did they spend 3 scripts and three different writers and a year and a half trying to do Funhouse? They just called Toby Hooper up and Toby could remake it.
I was talking to Tom, and I reminded him that Roddy probably had shot about, I bet 50 hours, maybe a little less. He had this was 1984, he had a video camera. And he shot all this behind the scenes stuff. He was goofing around with the actors and everything. I'm sure it's somewhere, but I'm going to try and track it down if I can. And,
yes.
Tom, was there ever anything deleted from the final film, or is it pretty much what you set out to make? Any deleted scenes or anything like that?
No, that film is what I set out to make. That is scene by scene, word by word. It was an amazing experience. Nobody messed with me. And I thought that was how it was going to be. Little did I know. A quick story, and for those who may have a memory, the Fright Night was like the small film of Columbia that year. They were focused on what they were sure was going to be their big hit. It was called Perfect. It starred John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis. Okay? And that was where the money and the interest was, and they were so fixated on that, they left me alone. And the big sleeper hit of that year for Columbia was Fright Night. Nobody knows anything.
I have a question for Stephen. One of the most significant scenes in the movie is your death scene when you turn into the wolf and Roddy stabs you. But the thing that's so interesting about that is in most horror films, death scenes happen so quickly, and that one is very prolonged and painful, and it's a horrible death. And even Roddy's reaction to your last breath is something that stands out from this movie than most other horror films. So I was wondering if you can tell us what you remember about your death scene and
yeah, and this goes with the question a long time ago about how I felt like when I first saw it. I mean, it's one thing when you're there on the set making it, and then when I saw it for the first time put together with the sound, it just, I could not believe how incredible it looked. And that scene at the with the steak and all that stuff. I guess that was shot in post-production after everybody had left, and it was agonizing. I mean, it was almost inhumane, the stuff that they put on me, and but you know, I mean, it turned out great, so you know, it was worth it. So well, yeah. Does that answer?
The pathos. It's like usually that, you know, that's the heroic moment is when you kill the, you know, you kill the beast, and in that moment there's so much sympathy.
And I remember it was really difficult thinking about what was happening. You know, it was really hard. I remember. I mean, not just the physical part of it, but it was pretty intense, and it was crazy. Thanks.
Well, a special word for Stephen Geoffreys. He took chances. He was big. He scared the hell out of me. And it worked. The character choices he made, they were very, very brave character choices. He was the one who was the farthest out. Everybody was wonderful, but special kudos to Stephen. None that I can remember. No, what you do is you break it down, you look at the special effects, and you choose. We did the bat already when Jerry jumps off the balcony in the house, and the shadow, which is an optical, turns into the bat, then you go to the puppet. So we've done the bat. So therefore we did the werewolf with him. It's as simple as that.
More questions? Back there?
Yeah, there was a comic series actually in the 80s for a while, I think Now Comics, that I think maybe Evil Eddie was like a main character there, like the big bad there for a while. Did you guys, anybody have any kind of input there, or was that just kind of a buying the rights?
Well, no, I'll tell you what's happened. I mean, it is sort of amazing. The Fright Night, and God bless you all, but its reputation continues to grow. And it by leaps and bounds. And I was recently contacted about re-releasing the novelization, and I informed Tor Books that I intended to do that, and I think that the legality is they have 6 months or a year to respond, and I also did the same thing with the comics. And I'm going to try, because there's growing fan interest, I'm going to try to resuscitate both the novelization and the comic books. I own those rights. I had separated what they call separated rights because it was an original and it was the deal I made with Vista. I do not have the rights to the movies. The studio does, but the comic books, the novelizations, I do, and I'm going to try to resuscitate them.
Right here, sir?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. It's like a total treat.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Nathan.
I don't know if any of you are truly, if you have experiences where you remember your first vampire movie, seeing it as a kid, or what affected you down the line, if anyone could use.
Great question.
I will tell you the genre was dead. The last vampire movie before Fright Night was Love at First Bite, which was a farcical comedy with George Hamilton. When they do farce, it means the genre is played out. It is exhausted. For 2 or 3 years, there were no vampire movies, and Fright Night resuscitated it. And as far as I know, there's never been another lag since '84 and Fright Night. So, and the first one I saw was, of course, Dracula.
Yeah, first one I saw was the original Bela Lugosi, Dracula. Stunning movie.
I saw that one too. Yeah, really interesting too. I was sort of the next generation, I guess, in that I grew up on Count Yorga and those guys, and real hammer guys, and I grew up in South Arkansas where it was very hot, very humid, so the theater was a real refuge, yeah. And Yorga and Fives and all those guys were the ones.
I was never a real big vampire fan, but I can remember when I was younger, my mother used to drop a bunch of us guys from the neighborhood off at this crappy theater, you know, give us enough money for candy for the whole day. We'd watch like 3 double features, and they were always Hammer films. And they were unbelievable. They were just exactly what like a 12-year-old boy would want to see. Lots of cleavage, lots of blood.
Oh, I got my own. Dark Shadows came about when I was growing up. And the other thing, I don't know, vampires are sexy because of their humanity. And I think that's what's part of the allure of this film. The humanity is, you know, it's very sexual content. Some of it's more overt than others. And then the humanity is also the humor of the film, which is, to me, what makes it such a unique piece.
I want to add one thing. My grandmother grew up in Appalachia. She didn't know what a vampire was. So when she went to, she hadn't seen a movie since, you know, what, 47 or something. She went to see this movie, and she was like, well, why did you hate the neighbors so much? Why was he so bothered? Well, he didn't drink blood. Well, you didn't see him drink blood. You know, so the assumptions are everything.
More questions from the audience? Gentlemen all the way down here.
Julie, this is for you. I think I speak for every man here that you can draw my blood anytime.
Should I say thank you?
Oh, was that it? Okay, any other questions in the audience? Because actually, I don't know where the people that are running the show are. Because it feels like
we're stuck in a question and answer session.
I'll forget about this right now.
May I just tell one?
Anecdotes.
Yeah, please.
Anecdotes. Just 2 quick things. I remember the scene where Chris was hit with that final sunbolt coming in, and he's going, I remember that day, it was so vividly in my mind because he kept doing it. It's like, this is another one. And he was on this thing where the camera was going down a thing, and he literally, like, after 5 times, you know, we had a break, and he looked at me and he goes, can you believe this is how I make a living?
You know, if everyone in the room, the advocate in me, has to get people activated here. If everyone were to email or handwrite a letter to someone at Sony, and just say, you know, hey, bring back all these people in Fright Night, bring, you know, writer Tom and Tommy will have to fight it out who's writing and directing. And, yeah. Anyway, it makes a huge difference in Hollywood to hear from fans. So I don't know the name of the person, but Tom can.
More questions from the audience? This gentleman right here.
Now, there's an Ellen connection, right? William and Jonathan?
You know, there are like 45 connections between these people here.
Okay, but I was...
Mine's not biblical.
It's like...
Well, I was a writer on Ellen.
Right.
And I wrote the coming out episode of that show. And Billy was, I did, how many? You were the pizza boy, right?
I was Ellen's last boyfriend.
Yeah, you did like 3 of them, right? I didn't get a chance to talk to Billy because they don't like the writers down on the set too much. So, and Billy was just a jerk anyway. So. But yeah, I enjoyed seeing Billy.
Yeah, and there's a Tim Robbins connection too, isn't there?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a Tim Robbins connection?
Any more questions for that gentleman all the way in the back?
What was that? It was pretty easy, actually.
Easier than you think.
This gentleman right here.
Yeah, could we ever expect like a part 3 Tom Holland versus Sarandon trilogy?
It'd be great if we could pull it off. I'm gonna try with that lunch.
No, like a whole different idea, like Child's Play right now, like a third team.
Yeah, you guys have worked together 3 times?
Well, more than that, Chris, we also did there was a terrific movie of the week called The Stranger Within that starred Chris and Ricky Schroeder and Kate Jackson. This is a terrific MOW. I would love to work with this entire crew again. I'd love to resuscitate Fright Night and do a sequel. I really
Yes.
would.
You guys would like to see that, right?
Yes.